Have you ever felt like you were completely losing yourself in a relationship? You know, stuck in a cycle you just can't break? Well, today, we're looking at a story about someone who tried something pretty radical to get out of that exact situation. It's called the 7-Day Silence Experiment.
So, it all starts with this one simple, but honestly, terrifying decision. This person was just so tired of being stuck in this painful pattern that they decided to do the unthinkable. Just stop. Cold turkey. No more texts, no more calls, absolutely nothing.
And what was that pattern? I think a lot of us know this one. It's that classic, agonizing chaser dynamic. You're the one always reaching out, always initiating, and the more you push, the more they pull away. They get distant, the responses get colder, and it's just this exhausting, soul-crushing cycle.
And that's what led to this whole thing. After getting one too many of those cold, distant replies, the decision was made to just stop. Go completely silent for 7 straight days and just see what would happen. You can imagine the stakes felt insanely high.
So here's what that week looked like. Day 1, obviously, is when the vow of silence begins. But then you hit days 2 and 3, and that's the hard part. We're going to call that the withdrawal. Around day 5, though, something starts to change. There's a shift. And then on day 7, we find out the result.
And this is the fear, isn't it? This is the one question that keeps so many people trapped in that chase. Is cutting them off going to make them miss you? Or is it just going to prove you never really mattered in the first place, and you'll just be forgotten forever? It's a huge gamble.
Okay, so let's talk about those first few days, because this is by far the toughest part. This is more than just a test of willpower. You're literally fighting your own brain chemistry, and it is absolutely brutal.
Yeah, there's actually science behind why this feels so awful. See, every time you'd get a text back, even a lukewarm one, your brain got a little hit of a chemical called dopamine. It's a reward. So when you suddenly take that away, your brain goes into withdrawal. This isn't just you being dramatic, it's a real physical reaction. It's a lot like kicking an addiction. And this number right here really paints the picture. In just those first couple of days, 10 different text messages were written out, agonized over, and then deleted. Every single one was a battle against that intense craving for another dopamine hit.
And this is where a huge kind of scary realization happened. The pain, it wasn't really about missing the person. It was about missing the validation, missing the fix. It was an addiction to the hope that they would reply.
But here's the thing. Once you push through that initial hell, something really incredible starts to happen. Around day 5, the fog starts to clear, and this massive shift in personal power starts taking place. So how does that shift even happen? Well, it's about taking action. Instead of just sitting around waiting by the phone, the focus got put back where it belongs, on their own life. Hitting the gym, actually seeing friends, these things weren't just distractions. They were about building a life that didn't revolve around waiting for someone else to text back.
Think about it. Before the experiment, life was basically on pause, just waiting. Waiting for a text, waiting for a sign, waiting for something totally outside of your control. It's a really powerless place to be.
And the difference is just everything. The new mindset wasn't about not texting, it was about actively living. They weren't waiting anymore. They were out there, living their life. And that is where you find your power again. All right, so now we get to the big finale. The 7 days are almost up. And remember, the original question was all about will they come back? But the actual result? Well, it was something nobody saw coming. This is it, right? The moment of truth. After a whole week of silence, of fighting your own brain, of rebuilding a sense of self, did the experiment actually work? Did they get what they wanted? And there it is. On day 7, the text finally came through. So the silence didn't make them forget you. In fact, it broke the pattern and it made them reach out. So on that level, yeah, the experiment was a huge success. But here's the twist. Getting the text, that wasn't the real story. The biggest shock, the real game changer, was the internal reaction to finally getting that message. And this number says it all. Instead of immediately jumping to reply, full of that old anxiety and neediness, there was a pause. A 2-hour pause. Not as a game, but because there was no desperation anymore. No urgency. Just calm, cool control.
And that right there was the real victory. It wasn't about getting the text. It was about realizing that your happiness didn't depend on it anymore.
The desperate need for that outcome was just gone. It was replaced with the solid sense of your own worth.
So, seeing this incredible result, you have to wonder, how can you actually do this yourself? Because it's not as simple as just ignoring someone. There are rules you got to follow if you want to reclaim your power and not just, look petty.
And seriously, this is a huge warning. If you try this and you crack on day 3 and send that text, you don't just go back to square one. You actually look even more desperate than you did before. So you've got to have a real plan.
The plan is basically a 3-step process. First, you have to survive that initial withdrawal, and that means being ready for it. Step 2 is all about reclaiming your focus, actively rebuilding your life, not just passively waiting. And step 3, if and when they do reach out, you have to respond with power, which isn't about playing games, it's about coming from a place of genuine, unshakable strength.
Navigating that first week, especially the withdrawal part, is the biggest hurdle. The person whose story this is actually put together a whole 30-day guide to stay strong through the process. If you want to see that exact day-by-day plan, we've put a link to it for you down in the description.
And that leads us to the final and maybe most important question. You've done all this work, you got through the week, you got the text. Now, what on earth do you say back? Because one wrong reply can undo all of your progress in an instant. But hey, that's probably a story for another time.